Lavender Town Syndrome was a peak of suicides and illness of children between the ages of 7 to 12, shortly after the release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan, back in February 27th, 1996. Rumors say that these suicides and illness only occurred after the children playing the game reached Lavender Town, whose theme music had extremely high frequencies that studies showed that only children and young teens can hear, since their ears are more sensitive. Due to the lavender tone, at least 200 children supposedly committed suicide, and many more developed illnesses and afflictions. The children who committed suicide usually did so by hanging or jumping from heights. Those who did not commit suicide acted irrationally and complained of severe headaches after listening to Lavender Town's theme. Although Lavender Town now sounds differently depending on the game, this mass hysteria was caused by the first Pokemon game released. After the Lavender Tone incident, the programmers had fixed the Lavender Town's theme music to be at a lower frequency, and since then, children were no longer affected by it. One video appeared in 2010 using special software to analyze the audio of Lavender Town's music. When played, the software created images of the unknown Pokemon near the end of the audio. This raised a controversy since the unknown didn't appear until the Generation 2 games, Silver, Gold, and Crystal. The unknown translate to "Leave now." The Buried Alive model, often referred to as its code, the Berryman script, was to be found on the final story of the Pokemon Tower, and what has now been replaced with the Marowak Ghost. According to the scripts assigned to it, the Buried Alive model was intended to be the boss of the tower. Once reaching the top floor, the following conversation would have taken place.
"You're here. I'm trapped. And I'm lonely. So very lonely. Won't you join me?"
After this, the battle would have been initiated. Once in battle view, the Buried Alive model appears to be a decaying human corpse attempting to crawl out of the ground. It has been programmed to have two white hands, a Gangar and a Muck. Strangely enough, the protocol for the Buried Alive's actions after it was defeated were not written. In the case of the player defeating him, the game would freeze. However, a specific ending was written by an unknown programmer upon losing the battle. In this ending, the Buried Alive was to have stated, "Finally, fresh meat," followed by several lines of gibberish. He was to have then dragged the player character into the ground surrounding him. The scene would finish with a typical game over screen. However, in the background, an image of the Buried Alive character devouring the player was to have been shown. Especially strange are the protocols for after this scene. The cartridge was to download this image to the small internal memory contained in the Game Boy, overriding the title screen that normally accompanied a Game Boy turning on. Instead, whenever it started, the player would view this image as the sound file staticmesh.wave was played. The intended purpose for this effect, unlike many of the other factors leading towards Lavender Town Syndrome, is unknown. Known as the whitehand.gif, this was scripted to appear as a Pokemon on the 3rd floor of the Pokemon Tower in Lavender Town. It's divided into 4 separate animations. an introduction, an idol, and 2 attacks. These attacks are unknown, as they are listed as fist and brutal. The animation is proven to be hazardous, while viewing the frames of the model has no adverse effects. The white hand is a shriveled, decayed hand, with attention to detail. Flesh is peeled back from the bone. Tendons dangle realistically from the wrist. For the first attack, the hand balls into a fist and swings forward. The brutal animation is missing several frames, as the hand seems to open up, then cuts out. After a few seconds, it reappears, closed again. No record has been found of these missing frames. I'm what you would call a collector of bootleg Pokemon games. Pokemon Diamond and Jade, Chaos Black, etc. It's amazing the frequency with which you can find them at a pawn shop, Goodwill, flea market, and such. They're generally fun, even if they're unplayable, which they often are. The mistranslations and poor quality make them unintentionally humorous. I've been able to find most of the ones I've played online, but there's one I haven't seen any mention of. I bought it at a flea market about 5 years ago. The game started with the familiar Nidorino and Gangar intro of red and blue versions. However, the press start screen had been altered. Red was there, but the Pokemon did not cycle through. It also said black version under the Pokemon logo. Upon selecting New Game, the game started the Professor Oak speech, and it quickly became evident that the game was essentially Pokemon Red version. After selecting your starter, if you look at your Pokemon, you had, in addition to Bulbasaur, Charmander, or Squirtle, another Pokemon, Ghost. The Pokemon was level 1. It had the sprite of the ghosts that are encountered in Lavender Town before obtaining the Sliff scope. It had 1 attack, Curse. I know that there is a real move named Curse, but the attack did not exist in Generation 1, so it appears it was hacked in. Defending Pokemon were unable to attack Ghost. It would only say they were too scared to move. When the move Curse was used in battle, the screen would cut to black. The cry of the defending Pokemon would be heard, but it was distorted, played at a much lower pitch than normal. The battle screen would then reappear, and the defending Pokemon would be gone. If used in battle against a trainer, when the Pokeballs representing their Pokemon would appear in the corner, they would have 1 fewer Pokeball. The implication was that the Pokemon died. What's even stranger is that after defeating a trainer and seeing Red receive $200 for winning, the battle commands would appear again. If you select Run, the battle would end as it normally does. You could also select Curse. If you did, upon returning to the overworld, the trainer's sprite would be gone. After leaving and re-entering the area, the spot where the trainer had been would be replaced with a tombstone, like the ones at Lavender Town. The move Curse was not usable in all instances. It would fail against ghost Pokemon. It would also fail if it was used against trainers that you would have had to face again, such as your rival or Giovanni. It was usable in your final battle against them, however. I figured this was the gimmick of the game, allowing you to use the previously uncaptured ghost. And because Curse made the game so easy, I essentially used it throughout the whole adventure. The game changed quite a bit after defeating the Elite Four. After viewing the Hall of Fame, which consisted of Ghost and a couple of Pokemon I used for HMs, the screen cut to black. A box appeared with the words, "Many years later." It then cut to Lavender Town. An old man was standing, looking at tombstones. You then realized this was your character. The man moved only half of your normal walking speed. You no longer had any Pokemon with you, not even Ghost, who, up to this point, had been impossible to remove from your party through depositing in the PC. The overworld was entirely empty. There were no people at all. There were still the tombstones of the trainers that you use Curse on, however. You could go pretty much anywhere in the overworld at this point, though your movement was limited by the fact that you had no Pokemon to use HMs. And regardless of where you went, music of Lavender Town continued on an infinite loop. After wandering for a while, I found that if you go through Diglett's cave, one of the cuttable bushes that normally blocks the path on the other side is no longer there, allowing you to advance and return to Pallet Town. Upon entering your house and going to the exact tile where you start the game, the screen would cut to black. Then, a spirit of Caterpie appeared. It was then replaced by a Weedle, and then a Pidgey. Soon, I realized, as the Pokemon progressed from Rattata to Blastoise, that these were all the Pokemon that I had used Curse on. After the end of my rival's team, a youngster appeared, and then a bug catcher. These were the trainers I had cursed. Throughout the sequence, Lavender Town music was playing, but it was slowly decreasing in pitch. By the time your rival appeared on screen, it was little more than a demonic rumble. Another cut to black. A few moments later, the battle screen suddenly appeared. Your trainer sprite was now that of an old man, the same one as the one who teaches you how to catch Pokemon in Viridian City. Ghost appeared on the other side, along with the words, "Ghost wants to fight." You couldn't use items, and you had no Pokemon. If you tried to run, you couldn't escape. The only option was fight. Using fight would immediately cause you to use struggle, which didn't affect Ghost, but did chip off a bit of your own HP. When it was Ghost's turn to attack, it would simply say nothing. When your HP reached a critical point, Ghost would finally use Curse. The screen cut to black a final time. Regardless of the buttons you pressed, you were permanently stuck in this black screen. At this point, the only thing you could do was turn the Game Boy off. When you played again, New Game was the only option. The game had erased the file. I played through this hacked game many times, and every time the game ended with this sequence. Several times I didn't use Ghost at all, though he was impossible to remove from the party. In these cases, it did not show any Pokemon or trainers, and simply cut to the cinematic battle with Ghost. I'm not sure what the motives were behind the creator of this hack. It wasn't widely distributed, so it was presumably not for monetary gain. It was very well done for a bootleg. It seems he was trying to convey a message, though it seems I am the sole receiver of this message. I'm not entirely sure what it was. The inevitability of death, the pointlessness of it. Perhaps he was simply trying to morbidly inject death and darkness into a children's game. Gangar and Clefable have, through trademarking and beta art, been proven to have been some of the earliest Pokemon made. Coincidentally, they're also some of the first Pokemon when you list the original 151 by index number, with Gengar appearing shortly after Clefable. Also, Clefairy was originally going to be the mascot of Pokemon instead of Pikachu, so it was going to be a pretty important Pokemon. Gengar is known as the Shadow Pokemon, but what exactly is it a shadow of? Take a look at a picture of Clefable, and then one of Gengar. Their body shapes are almost exactly alike, with the only major difference being that Clefable has a curl for its hair and tail, while Gengar has spikes. However, the shadow of an upright spiral like Clefable's tail would only be a line or a spike. Now look at their typings. One of normal type, and the other has ghost type. Due to their immunities, neither of them could hit the other with stab attacks, since they'd just be immune to each other. Have you ever tried to hit your shadow? In the original Pokemon Red and Blue, when you encounter your rival in Lavender Town, he asks whether or not you know what it's like to have one of your Pokemon die. At this point in the game, he no longer has his Raticate that he used in previous battles. Your rival battle before this took place aboard the SS Annie. Your rival's Raticate sustained serious injuries from the battle, but because of crowding and confusion on the luxury liner, it was unable to make it to a Pokemon Center in time, and the Raticate passed away. The real reason your rival is in Lavender Town to begin with is to lay his deceased friend to rest. Despite all of this, your rival never outwardly tells you that you're responsible for the death of his Pokemon. He hides his grief, and instead channels that energy into the motivation he needed to continue his quest to become Indigo League champion. The death of his Raticate effectively destroys your rival's impish childhood innocence. Although he tells himself that he doesn't hold you responsible, he subconsciously holds a great deal of resentment towards you, which further fuels his ambitions. Tearfully swelling upon his Raticate's grave to not fail in what he set out to do, he trains hard in hopes of becoming better than you, defeating you, and to eventually make it to the Pokemon League. Mere moments after he became Indigo League champion, he was defeated by you. Although he fulfilled his promise to his fallen Pokemon, it was only for a painfully brief instant. In the end, your rival is scolded by his grandfather while you receive the professor's praise. During the course of the game, you steal your rival's innocence, crush his dreams, and ultimately snatch away the love of his own grandfather. Oh, and by the way, your rival doesn't have any parents. He's an orphan.